for the recording. Okay. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another presentation of the online ColdFusion Meetup. I'm Charlie Earhart, and I'll be your host for the next hour or so. And in this edition of Meetup, our 268th, being recorded on Thursday, August 20th, 2020 at noon U.S. Eastern Time, we've got Rakshith Naresh, who's going to be giving us the public beta walkthrough of ColdFusion Next, or what's called Project Stratus. And so, Rakshith, thanks again very much for coming on, and you go ahead and share your screen and take it away.
Great. Thanks a lot, Charlie. Wow, 268th episode. Great, Charlie.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Great. So let me just go ahead and share my screen back. So let me know if you can see my screen there, Charlie.
It's coming. Not yet.
Okay. All right.
There you go. Take it away.
Great. All right. Okay, it's great to be a part of CF Meetup this time around. So yeah, I've been a part of quite a few CF Meetups in the past as well, but this one's special. So we just launched the public beta for Project Stratus. So if you have not signed up yet, please do sign up now. This is your opportunity to give us some feedback. And since it's the public beta, you pretty much know that the next major milestone is the release of ColdFusion Project Stratus itself. So this is pretty much your last chance to give us any kind of feedback before we kind of release Project Stratus. So this was just this week. So it's actually very close to when we had the public beta. It's not even been a week since. So would love to hear your feedback. So that's Project Stratus. So this is what I'll be talking to you about. So at Adobe, we are definitely excited about Project Stratus. The kind of feedback that we have received so far has also been excellent. And some of the groundbreaking stuff that we are doing with Project Stratus, I'll get to all of those as we go through this. Great. So even before I get into the details of Project Stratus, I just want to give you a sense of where we are with ColdFusion itself, right? So ColdFusion, I keep making this point every now and then, but I think it's really important to get this message across. So ColdFusion continues to do really well. Okay, so even today, 72% of Fortune 100 companies are our customers at Adobe using ColdFusion, and 63% of Fortune 500 continue to use ColdFusion and are our customers as well. Okay. So Charlie, I'm not sure if you noticed this. There's some annoying notification that keeps coming. Is it?
Yeah. I cannot get it turned off. I'm looking into it. Let me be clear about something. Only you and I hear that, right?
Oh,
everybody
okay.
else, you're not hearing that. I just want to say, everybody, if anybody else hears it, type in there in the chat. If you don't hear it, oh goodness gracious, I cannot get it to turn off. I don't know why. I'm clicking the button to tell it to stop, and it's not stopping. So I'm looking into that right now. So you go ahead and continue, and I'll work on it, everybody.
Okay, great. All right. So that's how ColdFusion is doing. And yeah, in terms of booking, so this is nothing but the revenue that ColdFusion generates for Adobe. As you can see, it's a nice uptrend for us. So it continues to do well. It continues to grow for us. And 2019 was a really, really good year. It was the best in like a decade's time, right? So we are more than ever focused on the future of the product. And that's one of the strong reasons why you see us making some significant changes for the next decade to take ColdFusion into the next decade. Project Stratus is at the cusp of such a kind of a transformation. So that's what Project Stratus is. Before I get into the details of Project Stratus, I just want to give you a sense about where is the world headed in general, right? So especially the web world, not so much the general world, but the web world itself, where is it headed? So this is something that we notice quite often, right? So back in the days, we used to have physical machines. Then it was quite a challenge to maintain the physical machines, the hardware, the application servers, all of that on the physical machine, right? It was quite a task. Then came in virtual machines that kind of abstracted the physical machine and said, hey, you know what? Don't worry about the hardware as much. Just focus on the VM instances, and you're all good. So that then came in the virtual machines. But now we have cloud as well. With cloud, it's like, don't even worry about virtualization software, hypervisor, none of those. Whenever you need it on demand, spin up a VM. So there's further abstraction that happened with the cloud. Then came in the container revolution. So you don't even have to deal with monolithic application servers anymore. You just deal with individual applications running in a tiny container. So you no longer have to maintain one application server managing like hundreds of applications within that application server. You just have one container pretty much for every single application or every single microservice per se. So that's containers. Then there's one other revolution that's happening, right? So serverless. You don't even have to worry about containers. You just need to, it's like function as a service, as they call. So you just need to kind of push your endpoint, push your code, and then that's about it. So that's serverless. So this is how the world is changing among us. And we realize that if ColdFusion has to do really well in the upcoming decade, just like how it has been over the last, so this year is also special. I'm not sure if many of you know about this. I'm sure many of you know about this, I'm sure, but I just want to bring that the fact that this is the 25th year of ColdFusion. It's actually a special year for us. And we have Project Stratus on this 25th year as well, right? So we need to make sure that the product does really well over the next decade as well. So that's the reason we are planning to play around in the space, to do really well in the space of cloud containers serverless. So that at a very high level, that is where our significant focus is with Project Stratus. I'll give you a sense of what we do in each one of those areas in my presentation today. So that's clearly the focus. And if you notice, all these are players that we used to be really good players in the industry back in the days, and now it's significantly changed. The focus is completely shifting towards cloud containers and serverless. So that's what we are focused on as well with Project Stratus. Okay, so these are the various players that are doing really well, and we want to make sure that ColdFusion does really well in all of these platforms on cloud containers and serverless. So just to give you a sense, cloud native application. So what is a cloud native application? So cloud native application is an application that not just runs on, let's say, AWS EC2 instances, but also kind of makes use of all the cloud services. For instance, storage, S3 for storage on AWS. RDS, the database service that they have, makes use of RDS for database. So basically every service is on the cloud. So that's the cloud native application. Now, if you notice, between now and 2022, there is a massive growth happening between now and 2022 in terms of cloud native applications. So we have less than 15% of production applications as are cloud native today, but by 2022, 35%. It's like more than double in just 2 years time frame, and that's like a 70% growth year over year. So that's the kind of scale that we will see, or growth we will see in terms of cloud native applications. And benefits, of course, I'm sure all of us know about it. It's a speed, scalability, and ability to automate stuff. So all these are benefits of a true cloud native application. So that's just to keep in mind as we go ahead. What about microservices? So there is a significant transformation that's happening here as well. So what's interesting is in 2020, this year, most of the new applications, at least like 60% of the new applications are microservice based. So all the new applications have this architecture where you no longer have a monolithic application, whereas the application itself is broken down into tiny pieces. There is interaction happening between multiple services. You can scale the application and scale those individual microservices. So that's the trend, right? That's how a new application is built today. And 60% of new applications are being built that way. And in the next couple of years, that number is going to be 90%. So pretty much every new application will be microservice based. And the benefits here of microservices, one is speed, of course. So once you have broken down your application into tiny pieces, if you have to, let's say, change one microservice, you don't have to kind of push the entire application to production, right? You can just make one change to that one microservice. That's where you get the speed. That's where you get the independence and flexibility as well to make those changes. So clearly, that's where the world is heading towards. And in the next couple of years, we will see this transformation, and Project Stratus is coming out to take advantage of this movement that's happening from a ColdFusion perspective as well. So if any of you out there are planning to go towards microservices, cloud, Project Stratus will give you a significant advantage, and that's what I'll talk about today. Okay, some more data before I get into the details. So this is the usage of ColdFusion today on the cloud. So if you notice, these are the various clouds that are out there: AWS, Azure, and Google. So AWS is clearly the largest share in terms of ColdFusion developers using ColdFusion on the cloud. So the green bar there that you see, that's for any applications that are getting deployed today. And we also try to find out how many of our customers would want to deploy by end of 2020. That's the blue bar. The pink one over there, so that's also really interesting. So what about services? So there is a section of our customers. What they do is they don't necessarily deploy ColdFusion on the cloud, but they deploy ColdFusion on-prem in their own data centers, but they invoke the cloud services. So that's the use services model. For instance, I might use S3 to store my data or files in general, but my ColdFusion is deployed on-prem. So that's the use services model. And quite a few want to use these services by the end of this year. So as you notice, more than 50%, that's a majority clearly, right? Will have something to do with AWS by the end of this year. Azure is slowly picking up as well. So we keep seeing increased interest in Azure as well. And Google is in the third spot. So if you combine AWS, Azure, you'll notice that pretty much 60% of our customers will have something to do with AWS or Azure by the end of this year. And if you bring in all the cloud together, pretty much like 70% of our customers will have something to do with cloud in general by the end of this year. So that's a huge opportunity. And there were gaps, there were pain points that our customers and developers used to face with ColdFusion on the cloud. And that's what we are significantly addressing in Project Stratus. Okay, so here are the pain points that we heard from our developers, customers, saying that what are the top pain points? So the first pain point was 42% said, there's no lack of direct integration. So if I really need to use, let's say, Amazon's Q service, I can't do that in ColdFusion. I need to kind of use Amazon's SDK perhaps on Lambda and run it on Lambda to try to perhaps use Node.js SDK to write my application. And so that ColdFusion can talk to Lambda, and Lambda can in turn perhaps make those calls to, let's say, Amazon's Q service or SQS. So that's a pain and an extra hop happening to Lambda. So that's where you see the top two pain points. One is lack of direct integration. I can't use CF for the direct integration. The second is I have to make that extra hop to Lambda, unnecessary hop to Lambda to talk to cloud services. That just doesn't make sense. And the inability to use ColdFusion on Lambda on serverless, that was one, and deployment configuration issues. These are the various pain points. So the whole idea of Stratus is to kind of address all of these pain points. The name itself, Stratus, as most of us know, are the low-lying clouds. So that's the reason we kind of chose that code name as well. So we have got something significantly to do with cloud and microservices. That's the reason. Okay, so what's the vision for Project Stratus? So here is the vision. So clearly we want to be a modernized platform of choice for building cloud-native microservice applications. So those are the keywords: cloud-native microservice applications, with absolute focus on ease of use. So ColdFusion has always been about productivity and ease of use, right? So we want to drive that access from a cloud and microservices perspective. And here is the key differentiator. The way we have structured Project Stratus is you will not get locked into a particular cloud vendor. Yes, we are getting a little late into this game of cloud integration, cloud services integration, but as we are getting into it, one is we are ensuring that it's the most productive solution out there. So when compared to any other SDKs, be it the Node.js SDK, be it the Java SDK, the CFML integration that we will have is the most productive one. And not just that, it's in our interest to actually build a solution that will work across clouds. For instance, the SDKs, the AWS or the Azure SDK, they would want to lock you into AWS or Azure so that you can't move your application so easily from one cloud to another. But since we are a technology that's actually, a backend technology that's actually building this integration, so we want to ensure that our customers don't get locked to a particular cloud vendor. So multi-cloud is actually a challenge that the CIOs are thinking about now. Nobody wants to kind of hedge their bets with just one cloud provider, which is AWS. So many of our customers want to use AWS and Azure together as a backup. In fact, Adobe itself, so within Adobe, we were a huge AWS shop. Now we are getting into Azure as well, just so that we have our services running on two different clouds. So we are clearly in the multi-cloud phase already. So this may not be a huge problem today, but we know that in the next couple of years, this will become a concern for the CIOs in general. So that's the reason we came up with a solution so that we have a significant differentiator when compared to competition. So that's the vision of Project Stratus. Okay, so let's start with microservices first. I want to get into microservices, so some significant changes, okay? So in the way ColdFusion will be available in the next version. Starting off with the first one, which is the installer size. So I don't know if you've played around with the installation experience. It's completely different. We don't have a GUI-based interface as the default at all. It's just a tiny zip file. Okay, you just have to unzip the file and pretty much start using ColdFusion. It's going to be as simple as that. And the file size itself. So let me just show you this so that all of you know that we have already made some significant significant changes already. So sorry, this is annoying. I'll just close this. Okay, so close. Okay. Doesn't want to close. Okay, so ColdFusion. So if you notice here, this is my zip size, okay? And if you notice, it's just about 146 MB. This includes the Java runtime as well. So with all that, the installer size is now just 146 MB. And anybody knows what was the installation size of the installer size previously? I'm sure many of you know that it was more than a gig. So we have made significant reduction. So this is great work that our engineers have been able to do in just like less than 2 years. So from when we started this project itself, it's actually been slightly more than a year. It's not even been 2 years. So in a year's time, what our engineers have done is they have like kind of broken down ColdFusion into tiny pieces. Okay, so what you see here is the core runtime. Okay, so it just has the runtime of ColdFusion. And if you need, let's say, to work with PDF, if you need to, let's say, work with .NET integration, you can just install those as additional modules. So that's what it does. And the reason, what's the rationale behind this? Clearly, it's microservices, right? So when you're building a microservice using ColdFusion, you can't have a massive 1 gigabyte container, right? It just doesn't make sense. Even if it's non-containerized as well, and if you're building a microservice, if your microservice is based on a gig of runtime itself, it just doesn't make sense with the memory that's occupied, the hard disk space, just doesn't make sense. So that's the reason we had to go this route. If microservices is what we are going to make simple with ColdFusion Project Stratus, we need to do this. So this was one of the massive tasks that we undertook. And as you can see, the installer size is about 146 MB. And as a result of this, it's blazing fast. So, the startup time, every time I try to run that, it only amazes me. It's like under 6 seconds or under 5 seconds now. That's how quickly ColdFusion starts up. Even if I've installed additional modules, it's just about 5 to 6 seconds. So that's what Project Stratus gives you. Okay, and we do have a GUI-based installation, but that's only like a fallback. Okay, so that's not the mode that we want to support. It will be there, maybe this release and perhaps next release, to ensure that nobody's kind of overwhelmed with the changes that we're doing. We will have a full-fledged installer, GUI installer, just like what we had with 2018. You can go ahead and download that as well. So it will just go ahead and install all the modules. It's like a monolith. If somebody wants to use the GUI installer to get what they had with the previous versions, we have a fallback option. But clearly that's not the recommended route. So we still want you to kind of use the zip installers that we have and start playing with those with the versions and introduce your microservices and run your applications within that. So that's the installer size. As a result, of this comes modularity. So CF itself is like broken down into multiple modules. We have a package manager. Okay, so I'll just show you the demonstration of the package manager itself. So if you go to, let me just show you this. So this is my installation. Okay, so it's Project Stratus beta. So if you go to ColdFusion, CFusion bin, you will see something called a CFPM. So that's the ColdFusion package manager. When you run that, this is what you will see. So CFPM has like various commands. So if I click on help, it's going to give me a whole range of commands that's available. I can install a particular package, or I can install a particular package. So these are all packages actually. So we don't call it as modules. So PDF is a package. Let's say AWS storage, that's a package. All of these are individual packages. I can install all the available packages for backward compatibility. I can install all the packages that are specified in a given file as well. So this is interesting, right? So I'll tell you how you can kind of use this file path. Okay, so that's to kind of automate your whole entire installation process. I'll talk about that in just a bit. Now there is uninstall a particular package, list all of these. You can also get info about a particular package. It gives you the package related information and version information as well. There is the scan as well. I'll talk about scan in just a bit. Okay, so let me just say list all. If I say list all, it's going to give me the list of various modules or packages that are available. The ones in green are the ones that I've already installed. So I have admin API, I have administrator. I don't have any of these other than this. Okay, so if I want that, so you will see AWS S3 legacy as well. So we have completely revamped the S3 support. So that's the one in green that I've installed. If you want to use the previous support that we had with the file tags and S3, you can use the AWS S3 legacy as well. So these are the various stuff. So now let me try to install a particular module or a package. So let me say install schedulers. So let's say you want to use schedule tasks and you want to kind of install that module. So I'm going to install it. So what it does is it's downloading a bundle as we see. It's going to dynamically apply that bundle on the server, and I don't even have to restart. It's as simple as that. And it's ready. The package has been installed by the server, and the server is ready right there for me to use. So that's the beauty of Project Stratus as well. I don't even have to restart. So that's how modularity comes into Project Stratus for building your microservice application. So let me just get back to my presentation. To help you, we also have a GUI-based installation as well. So I should have actually shown that as well. So let me just show that. This. Yeah, it's here. So if I log into the administrator, you get a graphical interface as well for installing those packages. So this is a fresh install. I just installed the public beta. So that's the reason it's kind of asking me to go through that migration process. So if you notice here, you'll see that there is something called as package manager available in the administrator itself. So this is a GUI-based package manager, okay? So if you see here, these are the various core updates available. I don't have any updates. These are the various installed packages that I have. As I said, everything is a package. So I've installed AWS DynamoDB, S3, SNS, Azure Blob, all these things. And these are the various available packages. Okay, so you notice that these are the available packages. I can click on anything and say install. So there is the command line, but if you want to use this, you can go ahead and use the graphical user interface as well for the package manager. So this is a significant change in ColdFusion. So zip installer with complete package manager. And this was not an easy task. Our engineers have done an amazing job of this, and we are ready to kind of release this in the public beta so that you can play around with this and give us feedback. And so far, whoever has tried, they seem to kind of indicate that it's pretty much flawless. They're able to easily use it, which gives us the confidence that it's all heading in the right direction for Project Stratus. So that's the GUI based installation. How do we roll this out? So this is the next question, right? So we have a full-blown rollout as well. So as I said, we will have a GUI-based regular installation using which you can pretty much install all the modules. Or let's say, you know, you're not interested in modularity. You still want all the packages that were there pretty much. Basically, it could be for backward compatibility with the old version. So the command line, the CFPM itself has like, you know, you saw this install all, right? I can say, give me everything. It says install all. It installs all the packages available for me, okay? So that's install all. So that's a full-blown version. Now there is this code scan. Now this is really interesting. Now, how in my CI/CD, right, so continuous integration, continuous deployment, so I would be making changes regularly to the code. Now, how do I figure out what modules do you need? So as a ColdFusion developer, how can you figure out the various modules that you need? For that, we have a code scanning utility that's again available in CFPM or package manager itself. So if you notice here, I have something called a scan, which takes a code-based path and a server URL. So if you just give that, and the server path itself. For instance, I'm trying to scan a particular directory in my installation right now. It's the Dynamo installation. So, and I just give the server URL. It's running on 8500 currently for me. So if I hit enter, what it's going to do is it's going to scan this directory and give me the packages that I need to install to run that. So as you notice, I need to install debugger as a package, Derby as a package for some reason. I'm not sure why I'm using Derby there, and the AWS Dynamo DB as well. So these are the various packages that I need to install. So pretty much you can automate your pipeline. So after a code check-in, you can pretty much scan your entire code base or the delta and figure out what modules you need. That scan is going to spit out a list of a comma separated list like this that can be fed into this ColdFusion package manager. So one is scan. There is another called scan and install. So it's going to scan and also install the set of packages for me straight away. So I can build my own runtime using CF package manager. So it's a significant change, and that's pretty much what we want to do or want to accomplish with Project Stratus from a microservices point of view. The other one is runtime check. So I can also run a file, and as soon as I run a file, if a particular module is not installed, it's going to tell me that, hey, you know what, you're trying to run a schedule task, but you don't have the scheduler module installed. So it's going to pop out an error saying that, hey, install the scheduler module. You can go ahead and install that as well. So that's the runtime check. So this is how we're planning to roll out to ease it into, I know it's a significant change from where we were with ColdFusion 2018 into 2020. That's the reason we have multiple options to roll this out to ensure that you have a smooth transition getting into Project Stratus. The configuration tool. Now this is also interesting. So this is again comes handy with CI/CD, right? You want to automate stuff. You want to automate the settings. So we have yet another utility, a command line utility called CF Setup. It's going to set up your servers. So all the administrator settings, the Tomcat settings, the JVM settings, and all the new XML files that we have, all the settings can now be set into using one single JSON file. Okay, so that's what CF Setup is. You can pretty much export all these settings into a JSON file, transfer it to a different server. You can get, set, add, list, import, export. So you can export the settings, apply it on a different machine, transfer. All of this is possible. And the Docker images that we will have will honor the JSON file as well. I'll talk about Docker in just a bit as well. So this is the new CF Setup utility. So let me just show you that as well. It's down here. So if you go to CF Setup, so that's available in, so I just show you the installation path as well. So Project Stratus Beta. So CFusion, if you go to not CFusion. So if you go back, if you go to config directory here, config CF Setup, you will see a batch file called CF Setup. So once you run CF Setup, that's again a command line utility that you can run for pretty much any kind of setting. Okay, so let me just show you this here. Okay, CF setup. So I can pretty much run all the commands here. So I'll show you some of the commands, or you'll just copy it. I don't want to kind of type it now. So I'm trying to get the runtime setting for application variables. What is it set to? So all I have to do is just go to CF setup and say, get me the status of that. Currently it's false, right? So I can actually set it to true as well. So that's the next step. So I can set a particular setting, a runtime setting for application variables to true on the CFusion. So I've created an alias for my installation. So I've just called it CFusion. You can call it pretty much anything. So I've called it as CFusion right now. So that's what you see here. So I go here, set runtime. So this is now set. So when I do a get now, you will see the value is true. So everything is happening from the command line itself. So let me just show you some of the other stuff. So you can also export settings into a JSON file. So let me just show you that as well. So go here. Oops. So I need to provide CFusion. It's not C. Yeah, I forgot to misspell. Yes, that's what it is. So debug.json will now have all the settings. I can also import, right? So I can also import a particular setting. So I have imported this into debug, exported this debug settings into debug.json file. I can actually import them as well. So I can do an import and say it's going to import all the settings back into this. Okay, so there's a backup of files as well that is taken to just to ensure that you have a backup as well. So this is how you can pretty much set any setting from the command line using CF setup. So this is also extremely powerful. So let's continue to move on. So these are some of the significant changes. That's why I've kind of wanted to spend a little more time on this. What about the rest? What about Docker images? So we have Docker images available on the public beta. So it's a forum again that's available. You can just use your Adobe ID to sign up for the public beta. The only difference is there are two environment variables for the Docker image. One is called import CF settings. So to this CF settings, all you have to do is pass a JSON file. So that you can create the JSON file from CF setup utility itself. So you can export all the settings into a JSON file. Just pass that JSON file to this environment variable, and your Docker image will get all the settings of that you need. Let's say the data services, the various administrator settings. All of those will be set in that particular Docker container. And you might want some modules in the Docker container, right? So this will give you that additional flexibility. The Docker image will take a list of all installed modules. You pass it as a comma separated list, and you get a set of packages. It's not modules, actually, it's install packages. So install packages takes a comma separated list of packages to be installed into the Docker. So let's say you have a microservice. So the nice thing is you can automate everything here, right? That's the nice thing about this. You can scan your applications using CFPM. It's going to tell you the list of modules that are needed. You pass those list of modules into Docker, saying that these are the set of modules that I need. And you pass the settings as well. So you can export all your settings to a JSON file using CF setup and pass those to create your own Docker images. So this is going to significantly ease creating a Docker image for your particular microservice. You can just scan the microservice, figure out what modules are needed, and then start using it in the Docker image. So that's microservice. Then we have cloud. So this is a significant focus that we have. So across AWS and Azure, we have integration with all these services: storage, database, NoSQL, caching, email, messages, and notification. So I'll show you some of these so you can actually explore it yourself. So this is extremely productive interface. I'll show you some of the code as well. So to start off, let's do storage. So let's see AWS S3 and Azure Blob. So I'm going to walk you through this, and I'll show you how it works across multiple clouds as well with just a single switch or a single flip in the code. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen on Builder. Just want to make sure that you can see it. I'll quickly get to Zoom and see if there is anything specific. Okay, so can everybody see the build screen that I have?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, thanks, Charlie. Okay, great. Okay, so this is ColdFusion Builder. And by the way, one other important announcement, some of you may know it. So we are going the VS Code route. The next version of ColdFusion Builder will be available on VS Code. Okay, it's no longer based on Eclipse. So what I'm showing you is the Eclipse version that we currently have. And this VS Code extension or the platform for VS Code for ColdFusion Builder, this will not be available with the launch straight away because it's still a work in progress. But we are going the VS Code route. So clearly it's a much better platform. So 10 years ago, or maybe more than 10 years ago, when we started out this ColdFusion Builder project, back then Eclipse was the platform. But we realized for ColdFusion developers and the language itself, VS Code is the platform of choice that's out there right now. So that's the reason we are making that shift. So the next version of ColdFusion Builder will be available on VS Code. Okay. So that's one other big change that's going to happen with Project Stratus and a few months later on. Okay, so quickly, let's take a look at this. This is S3, right? So there's a storage service. So there's a built-in functionality called Cloud Service. Now this takes in an S3 credential and an S3 configuration. Okay, so just pass in the S3 configuration and credentials, and you will get something called as a storage service. Now this storage service is what you can use to talk to AWS. Now, what I'm trying to do here is once I get a handle of storage service, so when I say storage service.list on it, it's going to list all the routes available or the buckets available in S3 and the containers available in Azure Blob. So for now, it's just S3. I'll show you how the same code will work on Azure as well. So that's the beauty of the multi-cloud support. You can have some part of your application working on AWS, some of it in Azure, some microservices on AWS and some microservices on Azure, and you can move it around as well. I know that cloud migration is quite a huge task in itself, but at least your application is now portable. You can just switch from one to another without having to massively change your code. And if you're using any of those SDKs, it's basically a rewrite. If you're using, let's say, AWS SDK and you now want to use Azure SDK, I'm sure if any of you have done this, it's a huge pain. At Adobe itself, we are like tackling that change. It's such a big change to move from one cloud to another. And the multi-cloud stuff that ColdFusion will help you in that specifically. So you may not want to get into Azure or AWS and switch clouds or have some presence in another cloud right now. But this is a future bet that we are making. It's going to become a problem in the future, and ColdFusion will have a solution for it, right? Starting with Project Stratus. Okay, so it's going to list all the containers or the buckets. Then what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get access to one root, and then I'm trying to upload a file. So I'm saying root.upload file. It's going to upload, and then it's just trying to download it as well. So that's basically what it's trying to do. So now, as you can see, it's very, very simple to work with. If on the AWS SDK, you have to do a lot more. If you're using Java or Node, but it's super simple with the ColdFusion's productivity and the integration that we have for the cloud. Now, if I run this, it's going to, sorry, oops, why am I opening this? That's not needed. Okay, so go back here. And if I run this, it's going to now get my responses from AWS S3. So I've given the S3 credentials. So it's going to list all the routes from AWS S3, and it's going to show the results for me. So there are quite a few routes available for me, and upload is successful and download is successful as well. Now, what if I want the same functionality on Azure Blob? Azure calls it as Blob service. So let me just go ahead and change that. Instead of S3 credentials, let me call it Blob credentials. So that's my these are settings in my application CFC. That's the reason I'm able to use it. So you will have to provide your own settings in whatever variable name you have. So that's my variable name, S3 credentials and Blob credentials. Blob has information about my AWS Blob service. and the specific configurations that I want. Okay, so now the storage service now becomes an Azure blob service. So that's the nice thing about this. So now I can quickly flip. The same thing will now work on Azure. Okay, go back here and run this. What it was on AWS will now start working on Azure as well. So this is the multi-cloud support. So as if you notice, we had a lot more routes available on the AWS side of things. We just have 3 in on the Azure side of things, but it's still the same. So there's an upload, there's a success for download. All of this is exactly the same. I didn't change any of my code at all. So that's the power of the multi-cloud support that we have. Okay, so let me just go ahead, get back to my presentation. So that's S3 and Azure Blob. So similarly, we have NoSQL support as well. So there's MongoDB and DynamoDB. So DynamoDB is a NoSQL database that is both document and key value pair database available from AWS, and there's MongoDB as well. So MongoDB, you can use it on-prem, or if you can use the cloud provided MongoDB as well, it pretty much works the same. So DynamoDB. So let me just show you quickly how does this look like from a DynamoDB perspective. I'll not try and run these, but basically I think you've got an idea. It's just the same kind of an interface, right? So I have something here. So Dynamo Cloud Service. Once I do this, I can pretty much get access to anything else. And I'm creating a table here, creating a set of movies table name. And this is also really simple. So ColdFusion does the type matching as well. Whereas with other technologies, you have to specify a type everywhere. You don't have to do that with ColdFusion. So you can create a table. All this is DynamoDB interface, and you get access to pretty much every capability of DynamoDB. Okay, it's going to be as simple as this. Similarly, MongoDB, right? So MongoDB, extremely simple interface again. So if you go to MongoDB, so I have a database. So I'm actually using Cosmos DB from Azure, which supports MongoDB. So I just need to say Mongo service, this is my data source, and I can pretty much use Mongo within ColdFusion with just a few lines of code. So this is the NoSQL interaction that we have, okay? So where was I? Yeah, so this is where we were. Similarly, we have integration with queue service, notification service. Again, extremely simple and productive to talk to queue services. So on the AWS side, it's called the queue service and notification service. On the Azure side, it's called Azure Service Bus. So we have an integration with both of those, and the common interface again kicks in, making it truly a multi-cloud application development platform, which Project Stratus is. So that's what it is. Serverless. What about serverless? So we do have a tool using which you can pretty much run ColdFusion on Lambda or Azure function. Azure calls it Azure function. So what we have here is in the pre-release, if you on the public beta, all you have to do is we have a serverless zip available. You need to decompress it. Okay, so just decompress it. Add your application to the web root. Let us know what modules are needed for the application by running CFPM. So CFPM and install any modules that you need. What Java home you need, you can set that as well. And once you do this, compress it back and upload. It's ready to be used on Lambda or Azure function eventually. So that's the serverless functionality available with Project Stratus. You can run it on the serverless mode as well. So quite a bit of stuff. So microservices, significant changes, cloud. This is something that we have never ventured into. So significant changes, running it on the serverless, running it on multiple clouds. The next one is modernization. So there's significant focus on the language itself. So one of the things that we wanted to do as a part of Project Stratus was CF Script 2.0, completely revamp our scripting engine and make it pretty much like JavaScript, right? So as simple as JavaScript with a consistent interface, because the script functionality still looks like tags, to be honest with you. So we wanted to change that and come up with CF Script 2.0, but we started it. The work has already started, but it's so massive to kind of change the entire language that this will not be available as a part of Project Stratus, but it will definitely come in a version after that. The next version, the code name is called Athena. So Project Athena will have CF-Script.auto, but instead what we have with Project Stratus is significant improvements to the language. And some of them are the REST and the spread operator. I'll just quickly talk about this. So this is a REST operator available in Project Stratus. So if you need to have, let's say, variable number of arguments in your app, in your function, you can now define a function to have a spread operator, a REST operator. So there's an X, this is a function. I have X as one parameter, Y as another parameter, and I can say 3 dots and then pass in the REST operator here. And what happens is this Z here will take any number of arguments and it will be available as an array. Okay, so when I do a write dump Z, and if I invoke it as with these arguments in place, K will be mapped to X, hello will be mapped to Y, and all these will be a part of Z here, right? So, and it will be available as an array. So when I do a write dump, this is how it's going to look like. When I do a write output, I can get the length as well. In this case, it'll be 4. When I try to print the first element of the array, it'll be this one here. So that's how the REST operator will work. What about the spread operator? You might want to spread a variable as well. So that's how this is how spread operators will work in Project Stratus. My array 3, so this will have 7, 8, 9. So this has 7, 8, 9. So it's one of the arrays that I have, right? So then if you do have, I do have 2 other variables, my array 2 and my array 1. So 4, 5, 6. If I do a spread of this, what's going to happen is it's basically a concatenation. So I have 4, 5, 6, and if I do a spread on this, the 7, 8, 9 will get concatenated. So it's going to be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In this case, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 7, 8, 9. So this is how the spread operator will work. I'm just showing you an array example, but it pretty much applies to other various types available in ColdFusion. You can use the spread operator outside of this as well. What about REST and spread together? So this is where it becomes interesting. So I have a demo function which has two parameters, and then there is a REST operator used with it. Now I'm trying to invoke this demo function, and I have an array with elements C, D, and E. Now, how do I pass all of these to the function? So I can do A, B, and then what I can do is I can spread this array out. I can do a spread operator here for my array, and the REST operator will get that. Will get passed to the REST params here, and I will be able to use it straight away. So this is how you can kind of combine REST and spread together. Parallelism, now this is extremely productive or extremely performing as well. So you would want to kind of parallelize. When I say parallelize operations, what I mean by that is you might want to run a specific operation on multiple threads and give you the result straight away. So let's say you have a huge array, right? And you don't want one single thread to perform this operation. To get performance, you might want to kind of split the task into multiple threads. So how does that work? So all you have to do is every function will now have a third parameter in which you indicate whether you want to invoke parallelism. There will be true, false. So by default, it's false. If you want parallelism, put in a true there. This is the last line here, array filter, put in the true there, and then the number of threads that you want. In this case, I'm using 5. So what's going to happen is this array filter function is now going to pretty much split this array that I have with 1001 elements, and then perform this callback. It's going to do an array filter using this callback in 5 different threads, and it's going to give you the result in a parallel way. It's going to process parallelly, and then the results are going to get combined, and then you will get the result back. So that's the parallelism in array. Similarly, there's parallelism on struct as well. So if you want to use this, you can use it on pretty much any function. So if I use mystruct.each, I can do a callback here, pass in true, and then pass in the number of threads that I need. And each will now be split into, so I have a struct here that has like 10,000 elements. It's going to be split into, the task itself is going to be split into 5 threads. and things will happen parallelly, and the result will eventually come back to this main thread. So I don't have to do anything else, but just pass in true as the parameter and the number of threads that I need. Immediately invocable function expressions, or IIFE. So this is really useful if you want to restrict the scope of a particular function or a variable in a function. This is actually quite handy. So how do you define a function? A normal function, right? So there's a function add together. So it's just going to add two variables, X and Y, and it's going to just input an answer. So there's a variable X defined within the function, and there's a variable Y. So it's just going to do an addition, and it's going to output the answer, like typical stuff. Now I can actually make this an IIFE, or an immediately invocable function expression. So what this happens is I'm defining a function, I'm also invoke it right there. So how do I do that? So provide the function definition, wrap it around in these braces, and just invoke it straight away. It doesn't have any parameter, right? So just pass in the parameter list, and that's it. This will get invoked. So it's the function is getting defined, and it's also getting invoked. So what's going to happen is the scope of this variables, all of these will be just within this invocation handle. So you're not messing around the global scope. So that is one of the advantages. So it's just lost right there as soon as you invoke. So that's why IIFEs are popular, and we have that in ColdFusion as well. There is something called as destructuring assignment. I just want to quickly touch upon this. So this is how the concept looks like. So let's say you have an array 10 and 20, and you want to assign variable A to the first element and variable B to the second element. You don't have to say array. You don't have to define an array and then individual elements in it. You just have to say, you just have to use this a destructuring assignment, and A will have the first element and B will have the second element, because that's how I'm passing it around. So I can also skip values as well. So what I'm trying to do here is there's a function that's just returning an array 1, 2, 3. Now, how can I get the first value and the last value? So what I can do is on the left-hand side of this function invocation, I can just pass in the variables, the first variable and the last one. I just can skip this. There's nothing in the second. I don't need that. I have to kind of ignore that. I'm just interested in the first value and the last value. And this is how I invoke it. And I'm going to get the first value and last value in these two variables straight away. So that's the destructuring assignment. You can also combine destructuring and the spread operator, which is again really interesting, right? So there's an array 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, so 5 elements in the array. So I'm just interested in the first value, second value, and I'll just use the spread operator. So basically I want 300, 400, and 500 in this rest variable. So that's called, so it's actually the spread operator in this case, because I'm trying to spread it into an array. So this is how you can kind of use these so the rest variable now will have 300, 400, and 500. So this is how I can destructure. There is destructuring as well. It's not just from an array. So I can do this for a struct as well. So I have a struct key value pair right here. Now I'm just interested in the first name and the last name element. So I'll just use first name, last name, and then reassign first name and last name using destructuring. So I can get access to the values straight away. So when I do a write dump for first name and last name, I'm going to get the corresponding values straight away. So it's as simple as that. Okay, so there are quite a few new features. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at Project Stratus. So we saw a lot of stuff in Project Stratus, right? Cloud, microservices, language. We have an iterator and static block support for CFCs, whole bunch of Java integration support. So you can now implement Java interfaces. There's a neat tag called CF Java, in which you can pass in Java code within ColdFusion. You can also have a function and define that to be a type of Java, and you can write Java code within that. So a whole bunch of Java integration stuff also available in Project Stratus. Okay, so we saw microservice cloud modernization. What about productivity? So clearly we want to be the most productive solution on the cloud as well. So that's Java code needed to talk to Amazon's Q service. And what you see on the right-hand side below is ColdFusion's equivalent to talk to queue service. So clearly much more productive than any other technology out there. So all this, the productivity improvements, the command line utilities, integration with DevOps pipeline will significantly help you with your productivity improvements with Project Stratus. Performance. So with all the breaking down of ColdFusion runtime, there's going to be significant boost in the overall reduction of startup time, nimble runtime, so less resources, and which will allow you to scale a lot better. So all this is possible with Project Stratus. And security. So we have support for single sign-on using SAML. So we have, so you don't have to deal with the mess around building a single sign-on application with SAML-based service. So we have specific functions available, built-in functions available using which you can easily build single sign-on or integrate single sign-on into your application. Just two simple functions, and all the mess around dealing with the SAML server, SAML protocol, all of that will be taken care by ColdFusion. So this will make it really easy to build single sign-on applications using ColdFusion. So that's on the security side of things. Yeah, road ahead. So the next version, as I said, it's called Project Athena. And we continue to focus on microservices on cloud. So we are looking at GraphQL, productive REST, APIs, micro gateway to create a service mesh for microservices. Make ColdFusion available on various Kubernetes services as well. So that's one of the focus of the next version. Deeper integration with the cloud. So we will have more services coming into the cloud integration. We might support broader clouds. So we're not just AWS and Azure, we'll also get into Google Cloud as well and integrate and bring those functionalities or integration into ColdFusion. We want to make sure that there's easier way to test out cloud services in a local system as well. So that's one of the focus for the next version. Modernization, so centralized configuration. So we're planning to come up with a central server using which you can configure. So just like how performance monitoring toolset is a one central server that can monitor all your servers, we're planning to come up with a centralized server. All your applications, individual ColdFusion servers can now pick up settings from one single server. So you may not even need to have an individual administrator anymore. All of that can be centralized in one single place. So that's centralized configuration, language improvements, CF Script 2.0 and beyond. VS Code based IDE, that's not necessarily a part of Project Athena, but it will be, as I said, it's going to come a few months later, post Project Stratus. So it's somewhere in between, I would say. ColdFusion Builder on VS Code, it'll be in between Project Stratus and Project Athena. So that's basically what we have. And what's in it? So this is the last question that I have. So what's in it for ColdFusion developers? We are making all these changes, great. So what we strongly believe is with all these innovations, it's going to create newer opportunities for ColdFusion developers out there. For instance, the cloud development, it's no longer a skill gap, right? It's a crisis. There's a huge shortage of cloud developers out there. So what we want to do is help ColdFusion developers get into the cloud space and a microservices space with all these changes that we have. And this will enable you to become cloud developers. So that's the whole vision of from a developer perspective for ColdFusion. So that's what we have in terms of Project Stratus. Lastly, how do you sign up for the public beta? I have made a blog post as well about this. So this is how you can get access to Project Stratus. So that's the URL. I'm going to kind of paste that on the chat pod. So this is my last slide. So I'll paste it on the chat pod so that you don't have any issues getting access to this. I know that it's like, oops, how do I copy this? Okay. So I'll paste this link. So that is all you need to get access to Project Stratus, which is on public beta right now. So I'm going to stop share, go back here to the chat screen. I want everyone. Link to sign up for public beta. So that's all you need to sign up. So that's basically what I had. That's the end of it. So over to you, Charlie. If you have any questions, anybody has any questions, let me know. So back to you, Charlie.
Well, thank you, sir. And I'll say there's been lots of chat along the way, and I've tried to answer questions, and some other folks have jumped in with answers. And I would say if anybody else, anybody asks a question that feels it hasn't been answered yet, go ahead and ask it again now, and you can just focus there at the bottom, Rakshith, on that.
Okay, sure. I'll take a look.
Like the second one from the bottom is a question about the Amazon AWS images, the AMI, and some
Oh,
questions
okay.
about the future for that, which I've explained that you don't tend to talk about licensing oriented stuff prior to release, but if you
Yeah.
will, go for it. And then the last one is about IAM with regard to the storage service integration.
Okay. So container licensing, is it licensing or leasing?
They said leasing, which is about the AMI, the way you,
Oh, okay.
they're per month, per year.
Okay. Okay. So there's so many conversations happening, so I need to go up again. Okay, take a look at that.
Yeah. You can also make that chat a little bit longer, just drag the top of it up, and then you can see 5 or 6 of the chats easily. And there's not that many above there that you need to go
Okay.
back to.
Okay. Okay. Let me take a look at that. Okay. Here's something here. For example, we really need access to T-type AWS EC2 instances. In addition, availability for server monitor. So I think, Christopher, what you're trying to say is you need AMIs to be available on AWS EC2 type T, right? T. So that's good feedback, I would say. So we will, so there's nothing restricting us in supporting those instances. So we can make it available for the next version. Project Stratus can be available on those instances as well, if that's what you're asking. Yes, it can be done. With the new storage service integration in AWS, do the IAM permissions still need to be as extensive as they need to be in the current integration for simple read-write operations? I think with AWS, IAM is something that you need to deal with for sure. So that is how AWS works. So with the new integration as well, I'm pretty sure you need that because that is how AWS brings in the security aspect of it. So I don't think there's any way getting around that. It's a part of it. But what we have done is the integration itself is really simple. That's what we have done, Rocky. Next, how do you specify data types for the REST operator? I'm not a big fan on random stuff being passed into my function. So James, yes, so not many or a few will not like the flexibility of bringing in multiple parameters. So it's going to be an array. So it's going to be a specific array. You cannot specify a type for the array. So that's what it is. So I do know that some of them don't like that. They would want to kind of specify an exact interface for their function and not keep it open, right? So yes, so this gives the additional flexibility, but also introduces some complexities dealing with multiple data types and stuff. So yes, so that's what it is. This link is no longer valid. Please contact program admin. Is that what it says there?
Yeah, whoever wrote that, can you clarify what you meant? It wasn't clear to me. But in the meantime, go ahead and move on to the next one.
Okay. Yes, so Michael had another question. Is the plan to still have CF-Strip.auto to be ECMAScript compliant? Yes. So we may not be 100% compliant, Michael, but we will definitely be a lot more compliant. It's not a strict 100% compliant, but the whole idea of CF-Strip.auto is to make it at least ECMAScript compatible, I would say, rather than 100% compliance. That is still the plan. Absolutely.
So about that link that he shared, I'll say that I clicked on it, and at first it popped up with a message saying something wasn't right, and then it redirected to that link that I just shared, which is a lot easier, adobeprerelease.com/beta.
Oh boy. Okay. Then maybe I need to update my blog as well with this new link. Okay.
Well, it may be it's a sort of link that's appropriate when you're already logged in, But if
Oh,
you're
okay.
not logged in, then it may get confused. And the other thing too, I was going to say is that sometimes people find that links to things like this don't work, and it's because of cookies and other things that are kind of messing with it.
Mm,
And if you try an incognito window, suddenly it works. But anyway,
right.
so that that link for the beta is kind of helpful. It just takes you to the front page of the pre-release, and whatever pre-releases there are that you are able to get to, it shows you. So
Okay.
that's fine for most people.
Great. Okay. I
Are
think
there
I
any
don't
other
see any other
questions
questions.
outstanding? I don't think so. Anybody have any questions that you asked that didn't get answered? Oh, the IAM, the access management. Last thing just popped up.
Okay. Right now, even to just write a file, your IAM permissions need to include far more than just put object, for example. So Rocky, you know what? I may not have the complete answer to that. So it'll be great if you can actually post this on the public beta forum. So,
Yeah.
post it and our engineers will give you a much better response than what I have, right? So please post it on the pre-release on the public beta forum, and our engineers will get back to you. So the engineers who actually worked on this, they might give you a better answer than what I did. Great. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Yeah, thanks
Thanks a
everybody
lot.
for the kind comments, and thank you, Rakshith, for giving the presentation. I'll hang out just a moment to see if anybody asks any more. And in the meantime, I'll take advantage of the chance to point out that yes, if you go to the pre-release and get in there, there's not only pages for downloading stuff, but there's forums, and you can ask questions. Um, there's docs, and you didn't mention this, Rakshith, and I wasn't sure whether it was okay to announce, but I guess now that it's public beta, the release notes, you should say this actually when you give your talk, it's 500 pages. There is so much stuff in Stratus, and it's broken out over lots of areas, and he didn't even cover everything, but he covered most of it. And a lot of it's the details about things like the AWS integration. So Rocky, to your question about that, it's possible that the answer's in there, and maybe you actually just hadn't read that one of the 500 pages, so you might find that in there. But if you don't, then yeah, ask in the pre-release. Another thing too is ask. Brian Klaas gave us a talk 2 weeks ago here on the ColdFusion Meetup, and he is open to questions. And you might find that what you say that you need to give all these permissions just to do a simple put, he might, with his experience with S3, he might say, no, 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 you don't need to just do this. I mean, you may be right, and maybe that's what's necessary now, but he might help you to see, oh, no, it's not, if you just choose the right thing. I've seen that with some other AWS things that, AIM is a very complex beast, and you can sometimes feel like you have no choice but to open the floodgates. And Brian talks all the time in his talks about keeping things to the least they need to be. So he's savvy to that and works with it in production at um, Johns Hopkins Library where he works.
Yeah.
Or
Great.
the
I
health.
see a lot of interesting comments. So please do give the public beta a try. This is your chance to give us feedback right now before things are kind of set in stone. So if you have anything to comment, anything to make a simple post on the pre-release, and our engineers will get back. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yep, and I reiterated that a couple times, and actually, since you haven't gone back to read them all, I just want to ask a couple that I thought of that people asked, and I offer an answer. I want to make sure you'd say that. First, like somebody asked, is there a date? And you don't typically announce dates or time frames at all, right? So no date, no time frame.
Right. There's no date or time frame, but I did see that quite a few are predicting based on the past
Yes, there you go.
past duration between public beta and the final launch. So yes, we don't announce
Weeks
it,
versus
but
months, right?
yeah, that's right.
So weeks or months, somewhere in there, we'll see. And then another question was about whether the builder would have the debugger, and I'd said, well, CF Builder on Eclipse did have it, so it's reasonable to expect that you would try to enable it. Are you saying yet firmly that you do plan to enable the debugger in the add a VS Code version?
Yeah. So just to be honest with you, it will not be available in version 1. Okay, so we can't bring all the capabilities of Builder on Eclipse straight away in VS Code version 1, right? So debugger will not be a part of the first version, but definitely yes, we will bring it in the version after. So yes, it will come in, but it's not in the very first version, because there's so many things to nail down to kind of move from one major platform to another, right? There is this huge language server that we're trying to build, a different platform altogether that we have to grapple with. So we don't want to delay the VS Code on CF Builder on VS Code to build all the capabilities of ColdFusion Builder on Eclipse and then release it. We'd rather do it in stages. So it'll just be a couple versions wherein which we'll have full compatibility with ColdFusion Builder on Eclipse.
And another thing people need to understand is that when it comes to debuggers for ColdFusion, you're not just debugging a language, you're debugging the request running on a server. And so while you might see lots of other languages with debuggers in VS Code, they may be just compiler debuggers, and those are easy to implement. A application server debugger is a lot harder to implement, and it has to do with not just what VS Code can support, but how to get the interface to properly render things the way it should and pass it to the ColdFusion server. And so it's going to be a challenge for sure, but it's good to hear that your plan is to add it. And somebody asked also earlier whether it was going to be free. And I said again that typically you guys don't talk about licensing and stuff like that, but the debugger was in the CF Builder Express. So assuming that things would continue that way, I said we could reasonably expect that it would be there.
So it'll continue. Okay, I can just answer on the free part of it. It's just going to be very similar to what it has been on Eclipse. So yes, there's a paid version, but there is also freely available. So with every standard version and with every enterprise version, you get free copy of Builder as well. So with the enterprise, you get 3 copies, and with standard, you get 1 copy of ColdFusion Builder. So you don't need to specifically purchase it. If you have your server, a license for your server, you get it for free. So the answer is both, right? So there's a paid version and there's freely available with the server as well. So that's going to.
And then there's the free express version where if you don't pay for it, and the debugger is in the express version, and that's what I was saying is that so it's reasonable to expect that it could be there. But again, you're no commitment. We understand that. And is the package manager available in the beta version for the Mac?
Absolutely, yes. It's available across the board.
And folks, you'll see when you go to the beta site and to the downloads, there's separate installers for Windows, Mac, Linux, Solaris, and there's installers for ColdFusion, the PMT, the add-on service, and so on. And the PM, package manager, is inside of ColdFusion. So it's not a separate installer. That's an interesting question. Will's asking, is Solaris still widely used? You guys must have enough people to justify it.
Yeah. So some of our large customers are still using it. So they continue to use it on Solaris. So that's the reason we haven't kind of dropped it from the list. So those are our really large customers who have 500 to 1,000 applications built on ColdFusion on Solaris. So they continue to use Solaris for the stability. They don't want to move away from it right now. So that's the reason we still support that. But you're right, the popularity is kind of going down. So at some point we will pull the plug with Solaris as well. So Giancarlo has a question. He said that he's not able to find CF setup. I don't have an answer to that. Yes, Giancarlo, please make that as a post. A question, ask that question on the pre-release, on the forum itself.
I have an answer. I have a guess of what it is. The CF setup is curiously buried under config.
Yes, it is. You're right.
So if folks, if you read the docs, it'll be clear, but when you're just trying stuff, it's natural to just install it and start trying stuff. So that was a surprise to me too, because you'd think it would be in the bin, CFusion bin, and the CF PM is in the CFusion bin. But for some reason, somebody decided that the CF setup shouldn't be in the bin. It's not in the CFusion either. It's in config, where usually there's just the WS config. So it's a little confusing. Current Express version of the Yeah, there's no separate package manager. It's in, oh, so that's an interesting question. If somebody wants to install CF, well, the CF setup is inside of CF. You have to install CF. There's no separate install for it,
Hmm.
right?
Yes, that's
Rakshith, you would
correct.
agree there's no separate install of CF setup. It's in there. Once you either extract that zip if you go that route, or run the installer if you go that route, in the ColdFusion folder that gets created will be the config, and in there will be CF setup.
That's correct.
And Giancarlo, you're saying what we said, is that you're agreeing? Yes, CF setup is in the config folder and you can execute it. Ah, the PMT, very different. So the PMT, that's the performance monitoring toolset. That is a separate installer, and you have to install that separately. And you should typically install it in another machine. That's another whole subject for another day. There have been presentations from Adobe recently. Oh, and now he's saying no, the package manager. Goodness. Right. There's a lot of acronyms. So the package manager, that too is inside of ColdFusion, right? Actually,
The
there's no
CFusion bin,
package
yes,
manager outside of it.
correct. So just go
So
to CFusion bin,
you
you will see
implement it
CF.
and then you run it. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Charlie. You were answering. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're the authoritative answer. I'll let you.
So yeah, it's right within CFusion bin, Giancarlo. So where you have CF start, CF PM is also available right there. That's the package manager, and you don't need a separate installation for that. The utility is available right there. As soon as you use that, it's going to download packages that you need.
And the key is that it's going to implement out of the box. That's why the zip is so small. It's going to implement out of the box as a small, very few packages implemented. And then if you want to add packages, you use the CFPM. So it's, I think some people are going to be thinking, hey, wouldn't I download the PM and tell it to go get ColdFusion? Because their experience from other package managers is that the way they work. This is a little bit different. And by the way, I don't work for Adobe. I'm not on the engineering team. I'm just reflecting what I know from the beta and what's been said publicly. But it is different. People are going to have to get their heads around it. It's you implement ColdFusion either as a zip that you extract, that's new, or as an installer. And then that is a very low, lightweight version that's lacking a lot, and you might even find that your code doesn't work. Then you run the CFPM, which is the package manager. You run that to say, I need this, I need that. And then if you want, you can script all that.
Absolutely.
Does CF still run as a Windows service, and is each package a different service? Well, I know it's not a different service, but
It's not a different service. Yeah.
that's another problem. See, that's where people when you all said you were going to go with a non-GUI installer, one of the things that the installer did was say, do you want to run as a service? If you extract the zip, there's no service, right?
No, there is, Charlie. So what happens now is if you try to run CF start, so there is this EULA as well, right? There's an end user licensing agreement as well. Now, since the GUI had that, you had to kind of accept the licensing terms. Now, what do you do in a command line? So what happens is with a public beta, Charlie, you may not have tried it yet, but when you try to run CF start straight away, it's going to tell you, hey, you know what, you need to kind of accept the EULA by running cf install.bat first. So there's a cf install available in CFusion bin. So when you run cf install, it's going to say accept the EULA. You can actually provide the admin password, the port number. You can also say what's the name of the Windows service that you need. So it's going to create a Windows service as well. So that's cf install.bat. So you have that with the command line as well. So I just wanted to point that out.
Very good. Thank you.
Is second John's question, would licensing ever go down with basic CF with packages costing additional? John, let me make that clear. Nothing's going to change just because we have made packages. So it's just a significant change in the way the runtime is structured, but we're not going the route of bare CF and additional packages costing additional. So there's no monetary or licensing implication with that. That's going to still remain the same, John.
And let me just say this publicly. Someone sent to me privately a message that said getting access denied when attempting to download the release notes from the PDF download button. So David, who wrote that, if you're still here and listening, it would be helpful if you could clarify, are you saying you got in to the pre-release using that link that we talked about, and then when you're in the pre-release, you went to the downloads, and then you went to the downloads, and you went to the release notes? Do you get an access denied? Now, I'm going to point out, I've not seen an access denied, but I have seen a problem which I reported in the beta forums that the form in the public beta forum, actually. So I don't know that that's been addressed yet.
Oh, okay. So I'm not so sure. So Charlie, can you repeat that question again? I was not paying attention. What was the one on the forms?
Yeah, they were saying that they got an access denied on the PDF for.
Oh, okay. So I will raise that internally, but I don't know. Is only one person facing that, or is it pretty much everybody facing that issue?
No. Oh, here's somebody else just said it. I had a similar problem last year with CF 2018. Again, he says make sure you're using a private browser, something with cookies in session. So I'd hinted at that earlier. Whenever anybody has any trouble with an Adobe page, just open a private browser, incognito browser window, whatever, or go to another computer, try another browser, because often cookies get messed up in whatever reason, for whatever reason. So just either clear your cookies for Adobe, but there's all kinds of subdomains and stuff. It's just almost not worth it. Just go to another computer and see if it works. And there's some other questions that are outstanding if you're ready to move on to another one. So first, let me answer one that somebody keeps asking, and I just hadn't answered it yet. They asked, does Fusion Reactor work with CF 2020? Which again, it doesn't exist yet. It's Project Stratus. Typically, Fusion Reactor, and again, I don't work for them, but I'm just familiar with that. They don't typically provide support for a version before it gets released. So I'm not aware that Fusion Reactor currently supports it. But I will say that Fusion Reactor is a Java monitor. It happens to support ColdFusion. It happens to find it quickly and easily. I am confident you could implement Fusion Reactor manually if you know what that means. There's a jar you put in a particular place and you change your JVM config to point to it. That's it. There's no reason it wouldn't work, but I don't believe it formally supports it. No. And then a question that is more for you, Rakshith. How is the memory footprint per instance, and will CF run on ARM, such as Raspberry Pi devices?
So I'm not so sure. So memory footprint is significantly lesser. So I can answer the first part of that because of the whole modularization that we have. Just like how you see the disk space, the memory footprint will also have similar reductions. Now, will it run on ARM? I'm not so sure. Not so sure about that, James. Will it be supported? I don't know. We might have to support that. It's still some time away, right? I'm not so sure, but my sense is it was because of the way it's structured now, it has to run on ARM as well. But I don't know if it'll officially support that though.
And there was one other question there, which I just answered, so I think that'll be the answer. And
Okay.
If it was about 2020, that's again a licensing sort of question that you don't typically answer prior to the release. So are there any questions left? Anybody? We've gone quite a long time, but I'm letting it go because I know this is all very important to people. And thank you, Rakshith, for sticking around.
No problem at all.
And it's all being recorded, so it'll also be available for others to benefit from. So that's why it's worth it.
It's almost 11 p.m. local time here, but
Yeah, I was
I'm
about to comment on that. Thank you, sir.
no problem.
All right, well, that's good. So people are offering thank yous. Thank you all. Thank you, Rakshith, for coming on. Let's go ahead and call it. And if anybody has a question they're burning to ask, just ask it in the pre-release forums. That's what they're there for. And you'll get answers from lots of people. And thank you, sir, for coming on.
You're welcome, Charlie. It was great being a part of this.
Happy to have you. All right, well, until the next time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
See you.